What happens when love becomes a cage, stripping away your identity. In this story, a man shares his journey of living under his wife's suffocating control, losing himself, and fighting to reclaim his worth. Prepare for an emotional ride. My name is Greg, 45, an accountant with a knack for numbers and, once upon a time, a passion for painting. For 15 years, I was married to Lisa, a woman who seemed perfect when we met. She was confident, charming, and had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. I thought I'd hit the jackpot, but looking back, I see how slowly, subtly, she took over every part of my life until I didn't recognize myself anymore. It started small. We met in our late 20s at a friend's dinner party. I was fresh out of grad school, crunching numbers at a mid-sized firm in Chicago. Lisa was a marketing consultant, always dressed sharp, always quick with a laugh. We bonded over late-night talks about art. She loved my sketches, said they showed a soul. I was hooked. 6 months later, we were engaged, and by 30, we were married with a small house in the suburbs, a mortgage, and plans for a family that never quite happened. At first, marriage felt like a partnership. I'd cook dinner, she'd handle bills. I'd pick the movies, she'd choose the wine. But somewhere along the line, the balance shifted. Lisa started deciding things, little things. Like what shirt I should wear to work because my taste was too boring. I'd laugh it off, thinking she just cared about how I looked. Then it was my hobbies. Painting's a waste of time, she'd say, nudging me toward productive things like helping with her side hustle. I stopped sketching to keep the peace. By our 5th anniversary, I noticed I wasn't choosing much anymore. Lisa picked our vacations, our friends' nights out, even what I ate. She'd insist on healthy meals, tossing my takeout orders in the trash if they didn't meet her standards. I'd grumble. But she'd smile and say, "I'm just looking out for you, Greg." I wanted to believe her. I loved her. But deep down, I felt this quiet unease, like I was shrinking. Work was my escape. I was good at my job, clients trusted me. My boss gave me raises. But even that started to feel hollow. Lisa would critique my performance, saying I should push for a promotion faster or network with better people. "You're too soft." She'd tell me, "You need to be more like me." I'd nod, feeling like I was failing her, failing us. I didn't see it then, but she was planting seeds of doubt, making me question my worth. I remember one night, maybe 7 years in, staring at my old paintbrushes in the garage. They were dusty, untouched for years. I wanted to paint again, to feel that spark I used to get from blending colors on a canvas. But Lisa's voice echoed in my head. "It's childish, Greg. Grow up." I put the brushes back and went to bed, telling myself I was just tired. But I wasn't tired. I was disappearing. That's how it started. This slow erosion of who I was. I didn't know then that it would get so much worse, that I'd lose more than my hobbies. I'd lose my friends, my confidence, my sense of self. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the years before it all unraveled, when I still thought I could make her happy, when I still thought I was the problem. Looking back, life before Lisa's control took hold feels like a different world. I grew up in a small town outside Chicago, the youngest of 3 boys. My dad was a mechanic. My mom a schoolteacher, salt of the earth types who taught me to work hard and be kind. I wasn't the loudest guy, but I had a quiet confidence. I loved drawing as a kid, filling notebooks with landscapes and portraits. In high school, I won a local art contest, and my parents framed the painting in our living room. It's still there, faded but proud. College was where I found my footing. I studied accounting at a state school, not because I loved numbers, but because it felt stable. I wasn't a dreamer, not really, but I kept sketching on the side, sneaking into art classes when I could. I had a tight group of friends, Mike, Sarah, and Tom, who'd drag me to dive bars or road trips. We'd laugh until our sides hurt, and I felt like I belonged. Painting was my escape, a way to process the world. I'd lose hours in my dorm, blending colors, chasing that perfect shade of dusk. When I met Lisa at 28, I was in a good place. I'd landed a junior accountant job at a firm in Chicago, making enough to rent a 1-bedroom in the city. I wasn't rich, but I was independent. My friends were still around. Mike and I would grab beers after work, and Sarah would drag us to gallery openings. I was painting more then, even sold a few pieces at a local fair for $50 each. It wasn't about the money. It was about someone seeing value in what I made. Lisa fit into that life like she'd always been there. She was 30, polished, ambitious. She'd talk about her marketing gigs with this infectious energy, and I loved how she seemed to have it all together. Early on, she'd come to my apartment, sprawl on my couch, and watch me paint. "You're so talented, Greg," she'd say, her eyes warm. I felt seen. We'd talk about our dreams, hers to run her own agency, mine to maybe show my art someday. It felt like we were building something together. The first couple of years were good. We got married in a small ceremony at a lakeside venue, with my brothers and parents cheering us on. Lisa's family was smaller, just her mom and a distant cousin, but she didn't seem to mind. We moved into a fixer-upper in the suburbs, splitting chores and dreaming up renovations. I'd work long hours at the firm, crunching numbers for clients, while Lisa took on freelance projects. We'd save for vacations, a week in Mexico, a weekend in New York. I thought we were happy. I didn't notice the shift at first. Lisa started taking charge, but it felt natural. She was organized, decisive. She'd pick out furniture because she said I had no taste. I'd laugh, thinking she was just better at that stuff. When she suggested I cut back on nights out with Mike and Sarah to focus on us, I agreed. I wanted to be a good husband. I didn't see that I was already letting go of pieces of myself. My job was steady, pulling in $70,000 a year by my mid-30s. Lisa's income was spottier, but she was always chasing the next big client. I'd support her, proofread her proposals, even helped her set up a home office. Painting took a back seat. Our garage became her workspace. My easel pushed into a corner. "We'll get back to it," I'd tell myself. But life got busy, or maybe I let it get busy. I didn't know then that Lisa was starting to rewrite who I was. That the man who loved art and laughed with friends was slipping away. I don't know exactly when I started feeling off, but around year 3 of our marriage, little things began to nag at me. Lisa's control wasn't loud or obvious. It crept in like fog, soft but suffocating. I'd always been a guy who trusted his gut, but she had a way of making me doubt it. Looking back, the red flags were there, waving quietly, but I brushed them off, thinking I was overreacting or just not good enough. One of the first signs was how Lisa started reshaping my choices. I'd always dress simply, button-downs, jeans, maybe a sweater, but she'd hover when I got ready for work, saying things like, "That shirt makes you look sloppy. Greg, try this one." She'd pull out something flashier, a tight polo or a tie I'd never wear. I'd protest, half joking, "I'm an accountant, not a model." She'd laugh, but it was sharp, like I'd missed the point. "You represent us both," she'd say soon. My closet was full of her pics. I felt like I was wearing a costume, but I went along to avoid arguments. Then there were my friends. Mike and Sarah had been my rocks since college. We'd meet up maybe once a month, grab wings, talk about nothing and everything. Lisa started finding reasons to skip those nights. "Mike's so loud, it's exhausting," she'd say. Or, "Sarah's always whining about her job." At first, I'd defend them, but Lisa would roll her eyes, saying, "You're too loyal to people who don't get you." She'd push for couple friends instead, her coworkers, their husbands, people who felt like strangers to me. When I suggested inviting Mike over, she'd sigh. "Do we have to? He's not our kind of people." I didn't know what "our kind" meant, but I'd drop it. Slowly, I stopped calling Mike. Sarah texted less. I told myself we were just growing up. My hobbies took the hardest hit. Painting had always been my outlet. I wasn't Picasso, but it was mine. Hours lost in brushstrokes, creating something that felt alive. Lisa used to love my art, but that changed. One evening, I pulled out my easel. Craving that old spark, she walked into the garage, arms crossed. "You're messing up my workspace," she said, pointing to her files stacked nearby. "This isn't practical. Greg, we need to focus on real goals." I argued, said it relaxed me, but she scoffed. "Relax? You're 35. Hobbies are for kids." I put the easel away, feeling stupid. By year 5, my brushes were buried under her boxes. The worst part was how she made it feel like her way was the only way. If I pushed back, she'd get quiet, her face cold. "I'm just trying to help us," she'd say, voice low, like I'd hurt her. I'd end up apologizing, feeling like I'd failed her. She'd smile then, hug me, say, "I just want the best for you." It felt loving, but it left me second-guessing myself. Was I too sensitive? Too stubborn? I started keeping my thoughts to myself. afraid of sparking that look in her eyes. At work, I was still doing well, got a raise to $80,000, took on bigger clients. But even that wasn't safe. Lisa would grill me about my day, then critique it. Why didn't you push for that project? You're too passive. I'd explain I was happy where I was, but she'd cut in. Happy doesn't get you ahead, Greg. I'd lie awake at night, her words looping in my head, wondering if I was letting her down. I didn't see it then, but she was chipping away at my confidence, making me feel like I was never enough. By our 10th year of marriage, Lisa's control had tightened like a noose I didn't even see. It wasn't just my clothes or hobbies anymore. It was my entire world. She dictated who I could see, what I could say, even how I should think. I was 40. An accountant pulling in $90,000 a year, but I felt like a shadow of myself, hollowed out by her constant criticism. Every day chipped away at my confidence, leaving me questioning if I was even worth loving. Lisa's rules had grown stricter. She'd monitor my phone, not blatantly, but she'd ask to borrow it, then scroll through my texts. If I'd messaged Mike or Sarah, rare by then, she'd get this tight smile. Why are you still talking to them? They don't care about you. I'd mumble something about catching up, and she'd launch into a lecture about toxic people holding me back. One night, she saw a text from Mike inviting me to his birthday. You're not going, she said, not asking. He's a loser. Greg, you're better than that. I didn't go. I sent Mike an excuse, and he stopped texting after that. My world shrank to just Lisa and her approved circle. At home, her criticism was relentless. I'd cook dinner, say, spaghetti, and she'd push her plate away. This is bland. Can't you try harder? I'd apologize, stomach twisting, and promise to do better. If I left dishes in the sink, she'd call me lazy. If I worked late, she'd say I was neglecting her. Once, I bought a new jacket, thinking it'd make her happy. She laughed, actually laughed, and said, "You look ridiculous. Return it." I did. Every mistake, every choice, felt like proof I was failing her. The isolation got worse. Lisa didn't like my family, my parents, my brothers. She'd call them simple or nosy. Holidays became a battle. One Christmas, I wanted to visit my parents, who were getting older. Lisa refused, saying we'd spend it with her mom instead. When I pushed back, she cried, saying I didn't care about her feelings. I gave in. But I lay awake that night, picturing my mom's disappointed face. I stopped calling my family as much, afraid of Lisa's reaction. My brothers noticed, asked what was wrong. I brushed it off, said I was busy. The truth was, I was ashamed. Work, my last safe space, started crumbling too. Lisa pushed me to chase promotions I didn't want. You're wasting your potential, she'd say. I'd explain I liked my role, steady, respected, but she'd scoff. You're so weak, Greg, no ambition. Her words burrowed into me. I started making mistakes at work, small ones at first, like misfiling reports. My boss noticed, pulled me aside. You okay, Greg? You seem off. I lied, said I was fine, but I wasn't. I'd go home, face Lisa's interrogations about my day, and feel like I was drowning. The emotional toll was brutal. I'd look in the mirror and see a stranger, tired eyes, slumped shoulders. I stopped sleeping well, my mind racing with Lisa's voice. You're not enough. I'd wake up at 3 a.m., heart pounding, wondering what I'd done wrong. I stopped painting entirely. My supplies were gone, lost. When Lisa reorganized the garage, I didn't fight for them. I didn't fight for anything anymore. I felt worthless. Like I existed only to please her and always fell short. The man who used to laugh with friends, who dreamed of art, was gone. I didn't know how to get him back, or if he was even worth saving. By year 13 of our marriage, I hit rock bottom. I was 43, a shell of who I'd been. Lisa's control had consumed everything, my friendships, my family, my confidence. I was an accountant with a good salary, $95,000 a year. But none of it mattered. I felt like a ghost in my own life, trapped in a house that wasn't a home, with a woman who made me feel worthless. I didn't recognize the man in the mirror anymore, and I wasn't sure I wanted to keep going. Lisa's grip had tightened to a chokehold. She controlled our finances now, saying I was irresponsible with money. My paycheck went into a joint account she managed. If I needed anything, a new phone, a coffee, she'd question it. Why can't you just make do? She'd snap. Once, I bought a $20 book on art history, craving some spark of my old self. She found the receipt, called it selfish. I started hiding small purchases, stashing receipts like a guilty kid. I had no access to our savings. She'd changed the passwords, saying it was safer that way. My isolation was complete. I hadn't seen Mike or Sarah in years. My brothers called occasionally, but Lisa would hover if I picked up, so I let their voicemails pile up. My parents, now in their 70s, sent cards I hid so Lisa wouldn't mock them. I felt like a traitor, cutting off the people who loved me. At home, every conversation was a minefield. If I spoke up, Lisa would twist my words, make me feel stupid. "You're so sensitive," she'd say, rolling her eyes. I stopped talking, just nodded to keep the peace. Silence became my default. Work was no longer a refuge. Lisa's voice echoed in my head, calling me weak, unambitious. I started doubting every decision. I botched a major client report, costing the firm a contract. My boss, usually kind, was blunt. "Get it together, Greg, or we'll need to talk options." I apologized, promised to fix it, but I was spiraling. I'd sit in my car during lunch, staring at nothing, my chest tight with panic. I stopped eating much, lost 15 pounds. My suit's hanging off me. Colleagues whispered, asked if I was sick. I shrugged it off, too ashamed to admit I was breaking. The lowest moment came one night in our garage. I was looking for a screwdriver to fix a cabinet Lisa had complained about. I found a box under some tarps. My old paintbrushes, canvases, sketchbooks. I sat on the cold floor, flipping through drawings I'd made at 25, full of color and hope. I didn't feel like that guy anymore. Tears hit the pages, and I heard Lisa's voice in my head. "You're nothing without me." I believed her. I thought about ending it all, not dramatically, but just fading away. I sat there for hours, numb, until Lisa banged on the door, yelling about the cabinet. I shoved the box back and obeyed. I was at my breaking point, but I couldn't see a way out. Divorce felt impossible. I had no money, no plan, no courage. Lisa had convinced me I'd fail without her. I'd lie awake, imagining a life where I could breathe, paint, laugh again. But it felt like a fantasy, not a possibility. I was trapped, not just by her, but by the version of myself I'd become: small, scared, worthless. I didn't know it then, but that night in the garage, holding those sketches, planted a tiny seed. It would take time, but it was the first flicker of wanting something more. That night in the garage, clutching my old sketchbooks, something cracked open inside me. I was 43, broken, and lost. But those faded drawings reminded me of who I used to be: someone with dreams, someone who felt alive. I wasn't ready to act. Not yet. But the fog of Lisa's control started to lift, just enough for me to see I couldn't keep living like this. It was the first time in years I dared to think I might deserve better. The shift didn't happen overnight. For weeks, I was stuck in the same routine: Lisa's criticism, my silence, the weight of worthlessness. But I kept thinking about those sketches, that younger Greg who painted without fear. I started noticing things I'd ignored, like how Lisa's love always came with a price: obedience. If I followed her rules, she'd be sweet for a day, maybe two. If I didn't, she'd freeze me out, her words sharp as knives. I realized she wasn't helping me grow. She was keeping me small. One day at work, I overheard a coworker, Jen, talking about her therapist. She mentioned something about emotional abuse, and it hit me like a punch. I never thought of Lisa's behavior that way. Abuse sounded like yelling or hitting, not this quiet, relentless control. But Jen's words stuck. On my lunch break, I Googled emotional abuse on my work computer, heart pounding like I was doing something wrong. The signs were all there: isolation, constant criticism, controlling money, making you doubt yourself. I read it 3 times, my hand shaking. It was like reading my life. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I was too scared, too ashamed. But I started paying attention. When Lisa snapped at me for buying the wrong groceries, I noticed how she twisted it to make me feel incompetent. When she vetoed a call with my brother, saying he was intrusive, I saw it wasn't about him. It was about keeping me alone. I started writing things down in a notebook I kept at work, hidden in my desk. Every time she belittled me, every time she controlled me, I jotted down. It was like collecting evidence, proof I wasn't crazy. The biggest shift came when I took a risk. I'd saved $200 from small bonuses Lisa didn't know about. cash I'd hidden in my office drawer. One day, I saw a flyer for a local art class, $150 for 6 weeks. I signed up, lying to Lisa about late meetings. The first class was terrifying. I hadn't painted in years, my hands clumsy with a brush. But the teacher, a kind older woman, said, "Just feel it, Greg. There's no wrong way." I painted a shaky sunset, and for the first time in forever, I felt like me. I also started therapy. Jen recommended a counselor who took my insurance, and I booked sessions during lunch breaks, telling Lisa I was running errands. The first time I sat across from Dr. Ellis, I could barely talk, but she asked gentle questions. And I started unraveling about Lisa, my isolation, my lost dreams. She didn't judge. She just said, "You're allowed to want more, Greg." Those words were a lifeline. I began to see I wasn't the problem, Lisa's control was. These steps, art class, therapy, my secret notebook, were small, but they were mine. I was waking up, realizing I didn't have to live like this. I wasn't ready to leave yet, but I was starting to imagine a life where I could breathe, where I could paint, where I could be enough. It was terrifying, exhilarating, and the first time I felt hope in years. At 44, I was starting to claw my way back to myself. The art classes and therapy sessions were my lifeline. Tiny acts of rebellion against Lisa's control. I wasn't the man I'd been at 25, full of dreams and laughter. But I was beginning to believe I could be someone again, someone who deserved freedom. It was slow, messy, and terrifying, but I was taking back my power, one quiet step at a time. Therapy with Dr. Ellis became my anchor. Every week, I'd slip away during lunch, heart racing as I drove to her office. I'd spill everything, Lisa's criticisms, my isolation, the way I'd lost my spark. Dr. Ellis helped me see that Lisa's control wasn't love. It was manipulation. She taught me about boundaries, about recognizing my worth. "You're not responsible for her happiness," she'd say. Those words felt like permission to exist. I started standing up to Lisa in small ways when she mocked my cooking. I'd say, "I like it this way," and keep eating. Her eyes would narrow, but I held my ground. It felt like breathing again. The art classes were my sanctuary. Every Thursday, I'd paint for 2 hours, losing myself in colors and shapes. My classmates, a mix of retirees and young dreamers, didn't know my story, but they cheered my progress. One night, I finished a painting of a stormy lake, dark blues and grays, with a single streak of light. The teacher, Ms. Clara, said, "This has soul, Greg." I nearly cried. I hadn't heard praise like that in years. I started sketching at home, hiding my work in a locked briefcase. It was mine, and Lisa couldn't touch it. I also got smarter about money. Lisa still controlled our joint account, but I opened a secret savings account at a different bank. I'd funnel small amounts, $50 here, $100 there, from bonuses or expense reimbursements. By mid-year, I had $3,000 tucked away. It wasn't much, but it was a lifeline, proof I could plan for a future without her. I researched apartments, divorce lawyers, anything to understand my options. I wasn't ready to leave, but knowing I could made me stand taller. Reconnecting with people was harder. I'd pushed my friends and family away for so long. I felt ashamed to reach out. But one day, I called my brother, Tom. I braced for anger, but he just said, "Greg, I've missed you." We met for coffee, and I told him everything, Lisa's control, my shame, my fear. He listened, then hugged me. "You're not alone," he said. I started calling my parents weekly, keeping it secret from Lisa. Their voices, warm and familiar, reminded me I was still their son, still loved. At work, I fought to rebuild my confidence. After that botched report, I'd been on thin ice, but I focused hard, double-checked my numbers, stayed late to fix mistakes. My boss noticed. "Good to see you back, Greg," he said after I landed a new client. I got a raise to $100,000, and for the first time, I didn't tell Lisa. That money went in my secret account, growing to $5,000 by year's end. Each step, therapy, painting, saving, reconnecting, built a foundation. I wasn't the broken man from the garage anymore. I was still scared, still living under Lisa's thumb, but I had a plan. I could see a life beyond her, one where I could paint, laugh, be free. I wasn't there yet, but I was ready to fight for it. On my 45th birthday, I was done living in Lisa's shadow. I'd spent a year rebuilding myself, therapy, art, secret savings, and reconnecting with my family had given me strength. I had $7,500 stashed away. Enough to start over. I was ready to break free, but it wasn't easy, leaving Mint facing fear, guilt, and the life I'd let slip away. But I knew I couldn't stay, not if I wanted to be whole again. I planned carefully. I met a divorce lawyer during a work lunch, using cash from my secret account to cover the consultation. She laid out my options. Illinois was a no-fault state, so I could file for divorce without proving anything. But Lisa controlled our finances, so I'd need to protect myself. I moved my savings to a new account she couldn't access and gathered evidence. My notebook of her criticisms, bank statements showing her control, Dr. Ellis helped me prepare emotionally, reminding me I wasn't abandoning Lisa. I was saving myself. The day I told her, I was shaking. We were in our kitchen, her scrolling through her phone, me clutching a coffee mug for courage. "Lisa, I want a divorce," I said, voice steady despite my racing heart. She froze, then laughed, cold and sharp. "You? Leave me? You'd be nothing without me, Greg." I didn't argue. I just said, "I'm done." Her face twisted, anger, then tears, then accusations I was selfish, weak, ungrateful. I walked away, packed a bag, and stayed at Tom's place. She called 20 times that night. I didn't answer. The divorce was ugly. Lisa fought for everything, the house, the car, even my pension. But my lawyer was sharp, and my evidence showed her financial control. We settled after 6 months. I kept half our assets, about $50,000, and walked away from the house. I rented a small apartment in Chicago, a one-bedroom with big windows. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I threw myself into painting. I joined a local art group, showing my work at small galleries. One piece, that stormy lake from class, sold for $200. It wasn't about the money. It was proof I was alive again. I reconnected with Mike and Sarah. Apologizing for disappearing, they welcomed me back. No questions asked. We'd meet for beers, laughing like no time had passed. I visited my parents often, helping with their garden, soaking in their love. My brothers and I planned a fishing trip, something we hadn't done since our 20s. Work steadied too. My focus returned, and I earned a promotion to senior accountant, pushing my salary to $110,000. I wasn't chasing Lisa's idea of success anymore, just my own. Therapy continued, helping me unpack the guilt and shame. Dr. Ellis said, "You chose yourself, Greg. That's strength." I started to believe her. The takeaway? Your worth isn't tied to someone else's control. Lisa made me feel small because it kept her in power. But I wasn't the problem, she was. Leaving was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it gave me back my life. I paint every day now, not for anyone else, but for me. If you're stuck, feeling worthless, know this: you're enough, and you can find the strength to choose yourself. It's not easy, but it's worth it.